A warm welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. The trade tariffs between the United States and China continues as China calls on the U.S. to completely abolish the reciprocal tariffs. On Wednesday last week, the U.S. president bowed to economic and political pressure to pause new tariffs announced for countries around the world for 90 days. That's all countries except China. His grouse was that China did not negotiate the tariffs. Instead, it announced a hike on U.S. tariffs to 125% from 84%. The countermeasures kicked in on Saturday. The Trump administration warned Chinese officials against retaliation before the measures were announced and said the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, should request a call with President Trump. Beijing hinted it would not engage in further tariff hikes, even if Washington continues its escalations. The White House clarified on Thursday that U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports are now at least 145%, not the 125% that Trump had said previously. The U.S. President Donald Trump and members of his cabinet attempted to reassure investors that things will work out with China, but he hasn't. In an online statement posted on Sunday, the Chinese Commerce Ministry said, "We urge the United States to heed the rational voices of the international community and domestic parties, take a big stride in correcting its mistakes, completely abolish the reciprocal tariffs, and return to the correct path of resolving differences through equal dialogue based on mutual respect." The ministry also said that China is evaluating the relevant impact of the tariff exemptions on some tech products announced late Friday, and these products include smartphones, computers, and some other electronic devices from reciprocal tariffs, including the 125% levies imposed on Chinese imports. In a notice, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol said the goods would be excluded from Trump's global tariff on most countries and the much larger Chinese import tax. Amidst the global economic challenges, how do UN agencies like the UNDP do their work now, especially here in Africa? And that's a question I posed to the UN Assistant Secretary General and UNDP Regional Director, Ahunna Eziakonwa. But first, a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles.
China has reaffirmed its commitment to deepening bilateral cooperation with Nigeria. Vice Chairman of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, Hu Chunhua, disclosed this during a courtesy call on the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Togar, in Abuja. He commended the China-Nigeria diplomatic relations to have been established on mutual grounds, saying the country will continue to do more to strengthen its bilateral ties with Nigeria. In his response, Ambassador Yusuf Togar said in this time of global uncertainty, relations and partnerships such as the one that exists between Nigeria and China are ones that should continue to hold dear to one's heart to ensure they continue not just to exist but to excel, to continue to assure one of commitment to the One China principle. The chairman and CEO of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabri-Arewa, has assured Nigerians living abroad that the country is blessed with an investor-friendly environment, urging them to continue to invest in the country. She was making the remark while reacting to the protest and petition of a group, the Foreign Investors Network. Its president, Ifeoma Nkengwe, and country representative, Reverend Emmanuel Olorunmawa, claimed that the environment in Nigeria was not enabling enough for intending investors, citing the issue of Win Homes Global Services, which claimed to have invested over $250 million in real estate in Okun-Aja, Lagos, and which was demolished by the Minister of Works, Mr. Dave Umahi. Mrs. Dabri-Arewa assured them that NITCOM had begun an investigation into the matter, but that they would have to wait for the ruling as the matter was in court. She says that despite this, the Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit remains a veritable channel for those in the diaspora wishing to invest. She encouraged them to also look in the direction of the Federal Ministry of Industries, Trade and Investment, which is set to announce initiatives in partnership with the Commission.
Allegations did not originate from any official.
The South Sudanese government has denied expelling the U.S. ambassador, Michael Adler, or ordering the closure of the U.S. embassy in Juba. The Foreign Ministry spokesman, Apuk Mayin, says the claims were unfounded, telling them disinformation circulating on social media.
Contrary to these unfounded claims, the government of the Republic of South Sudan has neither expelled the United States ambassador nor closed its embassy in Washington, D.C. These allegations did not originate from any official source within the government and are entirely without merit. The U.S. ambassador to South Sudan remains fully accredited and continues to enjoy the full support of our government.
Welcome back. The United Nations Development Programme is currently facing significant global economic challenges, including persistent poverty, inequality, and the impact of climate change. But let's hear more from Regional Director Ahunna Eziakonwa. Ms. Eziakonwa, thank you so much for being here in Channels TV.
It's great to see you, Amach.
Great to see you as well. Just a few questions, on your work so far, updates on the last time that we spoke. How does the UNDP fit into the current world that we have, one that's filled with global economic uncertainty and also potential funding cuts?
Yeah, it's a very strange place to be because we have, for the past few decades, enjoyed multilateralism. That is a world that recognizes the importance of multilateral institutions like UNDP and our collective future, and today we can't say the same. Development aid has moved into a transactional space. So it really is more about tit for tat, and that is difficult because it compromises our ability to keep global focus on global development challenges. So the development is local, but it's also global. So an agency like UNDP, like many in the UN, are having to scramble to see how do we continue to accompany countries' development in an era when development aid is being defunded. And, how do we maintain global solidarity for countries that require support still to undertake their development journey. So it's trying times, but also I see some opportunities within that.
Have you had to shift focus a little bit in order to adjust?
Well, this is happening all very quickly and it's still fluid because every day you wake up and there's a new reality. So I think all of us are trying not to be too distracted by the disruptions because this is what our Secretary General said. He said, don't allow the disruptions to distract you from the main goals of the UN, our core values, for instance. So on one hand, we have to keep our composure and our eyes concentrated on the challenges that face humanity, climate change, eroding fiscal space, financing for development, the sustainable development goals. On the other hand, we have to adapt to the changes and the new realities and the difficulties that many countries will face and the shrinking space of multilateralism. So it's a kind of a double whammy. On one hand, let's keep our eyes on the prize. We are very clear what humanity needs to survive and to be sustained, to be sustainable. On the other hand, yes, we have to remodel. So there is a lot of discussion going on how we right size, not downsize, but right size our entities so that we have a sharper focus. We're going to be doing more with less. What does that mean in terms of our structures, in terms of our workforce, in terms of the issues that we focus on? And I think the development model is going to change as a result of this because we will get a little bit smarter, I think, and these are now, I think, the positive things. We should be able to look at leveraging, look at more collaboration between our systems, our institutions. We need to look at consolidation more. It's not a time to have multiple structures and silos. We need to defeat the silos in our system. So I think overall everyone is thinking of adjustments that make us more nimble, but also it's not really, for me, it's not about how we survive. It's about how we thrive in times of uncertainty. It's about how we make ourselves better.
Right. Indeed, how to make yourself better. But I know that much of your work is also focused on Africa. I mean, you are African. Incidentally, you're also Nigerian, so we can claim you. But we know that, you know, your tentacles spread across the continent. And much of UNDP work on Africa has been focused on poverty alleviation over the years, as well as technological improvement. But I also see a shift towards, you know, the establishment of tech hubs, also initiatives like that. How do they fit into the bigger strategy of the UNDP?
No, I think it's part of what I'm saying about changing our development model. Because traditionally, of course, we work with governments and we work on institutions, we work on systems, but there is a major disruption that technology has brought into play. So you have to do development differently. You have to think about the new technologies. You have to think about innovation. But also we now have multiple burdens on economies, you know. Just apart from what's happening globally and the geopolitics and what's about to happen to the global economy in terms of, you know, a major upset that will affect everyone, including Nigeria. You have the fact that we have new technologies, AI for one, and the governance of all these technologies. I always say actually the countries that will make it in the current environment are those who understand the importance of technology and innovation in development, in the development space, and what it will take to transform their systems using these new tools. And it's about government investment in the things that matter, right? Because technology doesn't just happen by itself. Innovation doesn't just happen by itself. And it's not just a remit of the private sector and enterprises. It's governments that make that happen. If you look at the US, all advanced countries, the government stepped up and invested heavily. The kind of money you need to transition your economy in a way that it adopts technological advancement is not what private sector can handle alone. So governments that understand the place of innovation and technology in the development space are the ones who will make it. And UNDP is trying to also orient itself. We need to get our own digital literacy in the organization to be able to support and accompany countries to move in that direction. This is a game changer. The need to accelerate development using the new technologies. And we can get so much further. But we also have the negative parts of digital tools and technology. And, well, you can leave a lot of people behind, right? You know, because if it becomes a thing of access, who has access and who doesn't. And those who have access are going to get on the speed lane, and those who don't will be left way behind. So you have to make sure that there is access, affordability, you know, for everyone, and you're pulling also women. We can have a lot of inequality that is widened if we don't govern the technology space better. Technology in politics, you know, the whole misinformation campaign that then influences decisions that are made. I mean, governments need to figure out how to manage that, because that's quite dangerous, where technology and digital is used to pass on all kinds of information that is untrue but also can fan conflict and violence. So there are areas that could be quite dangerous and disturbing, and we need to make sure that governing the technology space includes all of these reflections.
Could you speak more about the role of women in this technological developments and the innovations? Because they do belong to the vulnerable class, and we find more men in these spaces. And as we move forward, and the issue of gender equality becomes even more important and brought up as a priority in many fora, how do we help women to fill in these spaces?
Yes, I think education, making sure that you're bringing the learning into education spaces, because we've invested over the years in making sure girls are in school. And now we've made a lot of progress. So you have a captive platform there. Start with the schools, to make sure that at least these technological facilities are made available in schools, because in schools it won't just be the boys, but you do need to prioritize girls because they are in a way disadvantaged already with access. So it has to be deliberate effort made at the level of governments, but also organizations like ours, to ensure that girls are not left behind. And we are doing that. We are making sure that STEM and all of that have some specific components that address the gap with the girls. We have to encourage parents to encourage their girls to go into engineering and other courses like that, and make sure that they have the support to do that. So there are multiple things that has to be done on that, but it has to be intentional.
Indeed, it does. And I wanted to ask about how much progress the new innovation hub, the center that you established last year in Ikoyi, Lagos, is doing. It's been 1 year, almost 1 year, I should say, since that time.
Indeed. We flagged off Timbuktu, which is this initiative to support the sort of startup revolution that is already happening on the continent, to spark that. And, the idea is to establish 10 hubs, tech hubs at a Pan-African scale across the continent. And the Lagos hub, which is FinTech, was the first one that was launched. So congratulations, Nigeria. But since then, we've now launched another 3. As you say, it's not even been 1 year, so we're on a speed lane there. We launched in Kigali, the Health Tech Hub, in Nairobi, the Green Tech Hub, and we also launched the Mind Tech Hub in Lusaka. This year, towards the end of the year, we will launch Creative Tech in Cape Town and Manufacturing Tech in Addis Ababa.
What would be immediate solutions to Africa living beyond aid?
Well, I think you have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area that can help power economies in terms of productivity. Because if you implement this arrangement, which is now the largest integrated market in the world, $1.3 billion market, billion people market, you can't, countries have signed this. You now have to ask the serious questions, especially in this tariff war, trade war environment. How do we implement this? Because that's going to help power our economies. That's going to help us discover new avenues for revenue mobilization, because Africa's trade with itself is minimal, right? So you have that opportunity, and I would say countries now have to come together in an urgent way and talk about how to remove the obstacles that are still in the way of making this a reality, particularly cross-border issues. The second one, I think, is, you need to then ask, who are our partners? you know, and what kind of strategies are we having with these partners? You know, everybody has a strategy for Africa and for African countries. I haven't seen Africa's strategy for the European Union, Africa's strategy for India, Africa's strategy for Japan. I think it's really important now to understand how to negotiate better deals with the partners, whether it's in the business sector, where Africa has a lot to offer, right, in terms of its minerals, but also other things that the world is looking for. But we don't always get a fair deal. So very quickly building the capability to negotiate in the world market, to negotiate in the forums like the G20 for fairer, more just deals with Africa. It's really important, and you can do that at individual countries, but I think better to do it as one. We have a seat at the G20 as Africa through the African Union. The G20 this year will be hosted by South Africa under very strenuous circumstances where the world is not coming together around the things that matter, like financing for development. Africa needs to unify around the key priorities that it needs to secure on those platforms. So leaders need to come together and think about this, and they need to carry along their private sector, right? So there are things to do short, medium, long term. Short term, you need to put together very quickly a task team that's going to try to understand the impact of this on economies and people and come up with immediate measures to deal with them. And long term, I think looking at the structure of our economies and making choices that favor country, we need to tackle governance, you know? This is something that UNDP works on a daily basis. And as I said, it's not a poor continent. Nigeria is not a poor country. We've got everything we need here. But governance issues have prevented us from getting there. You know, somebody said, you know, we exist to stop you from going from hell rather than taking you to heaven. I think we need to go beyond this, and our investment should be about taking people to heaven, not just stopping them from going to hell. And that means you go all the way. You go to the deeper things, the roots of the problems, and start to tackle them, you know. So it's urgent. I think everyone has to take in the urgency of this, come up with emergency measures, but go beyond emergency measures, just reacting, you know. Africa, the only way, if you ask me, to survive what's happening now is unity among the willing coalition, those who believe still, unity within Africa, but also Africa unifying with partners who have their best interest at heart. Africa being able to negotiate better deals. It's going to be important to carry along Africa's private sector. It's going to be important to have social safety nets, because some people will fall through the cracks in this mayhem. Nobody even has talked about big companies that are now rolling back on rights, labor rights. You know, this stuff is contagious. You know, people who want to use this opportunity to exploit more are coming now. I mean, companies are starting to pull back on gender equality, on, you know, DEI, as you say, diversity, equality, and inclusion. This cannot happen in Africa because we're still so far away from mobilizing all of society for our prosperity. So you cannot have a situation where businesses don't value inclusion, diversity, and equity, right? We can't afford a situation where governments are not prioritizing gender equality, because we know that empowering women it's an important ingredient in getting there. So rolling back some of these values, it's not an option for Africa. You know, we have to insist on them, because without them, we don't have a sustainable future. These core values are really important in the development journey. We can see where we've seen progress, particularly in Europe. They have had to integrate these value systems. So it's about choices, but we have to keep very vigilant on how all of our systems are maintaining progress in these areas, including the business sector.
You've given us a lot to think about, Ms. Yakonwa. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
This is where we end the program this week. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.